Today's episode is brought to you by Apprentice Academy. Apprentice Academy is my audio production and engineering school based out of the West Barn in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a 16-week program that puts you in the driver's seat, totally immersed in the studio, learning techniques, learning technology, learning everything we talk about here on the podcast, which is how to get in a room and stay in a room, all the nuances of the music business. We love this program. It's a great time. We'd love to talk to you more about it. Hit us up at apprenticeacademy.net. There's a lot of information there as well as a contact. We have a 2021 fall semester starting the last week of August. We also provide virtual classes. So if you can't come to Nashville and participate with us, we've got a great virtual program as well. Reach out. We'd love to talk to you at apprenticeacademy.net.
But this guy said, if you want to be wealthy, don't focus on money. You focus on value. Create value, and money is a natural byproduct of value. I was just like, wow, that's like mind-blowing to me, because that's if you can go create value, people will pay you for it.
You got me thinking. Some of the illusions that are your perception before you got into the business was that you would have a big break. You find out there is no big break.
Nope.
It's a billion small breaks every day, right? And breaks that never see the light of day. The other one is that you're going to get a record deal, or you're going to get a publishing deal, and your sugar daddy's going to take care of you. Your sugar daddy is your publisher. You know, it's like, my hero, you've now come, and I'm going to just do my art, and you're going to take care of all my business, and the cuts are going to start pouring in. And it's going to be this factory where I make it, and then you put it in the stores. And then you find out that every songwriter has the same story about their publisher, which is they could tell you that 9 times out of 10, they get the cuts. Yes. They go ahead and it's like, oh, this is how that song happened. This is how that song happened. It happened because I played it for this person, or I played it for that person. So people become very disenchanted. And I guess the moral of this story, me telling this story, is like, the only thing you know about your expectations is that they're not going to be that way. You're not going to become Mike Shimshack or Bob Clearmountain or Jimmy Robbins or, these people that are successful in their fields. You're not going to become those people, and it's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. It's going to go a much different way. It's going to be great. It's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's not going to go that way. You're going to find out that it's like, oh, as with everything, I have to do it. Oh, why don't I want a manager? Well, because you watched Behind the Music and you found out that Billy Joel's manager bought a bunch of Clydesdales. Yeah. Right. And it's like, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself.
You do. Listen, nothing would make me happier than to find a manager that I thought was really, connected and was like, you hear about these guys, these songwriters that have these managers like, that are like, they're two peas in a pod. It's all about my friend Sam Hollander has a really great manager named Brett Descend. They've been together for 25 years, man. They're like brothers, And so
that's what everybody hopes for.
That's what everybody hopes for. I've not encountered that myself,
What they get is sort of that semi-abusive stepfather vibe where it's like they're blaming you for all of your failures.
And
they sign you because you're a genius and then go right into fixing you as soon as they sign you.
Totally. But some of the stuff is like, I remember with the publisher for the, because they'd written this giant check for me. I was like, I felt like I worked for him, the dynamic was so bizarre in my head. And honestly, I've never wanted a publishing deal since. They were not bad. They got gobbled up by BMG at the time. The publisher I was signed to was a little publisher called Stage 3. They were like a boutique, and they had some of the best songwriters in the world on it. I had no idea how I got on this thing, but shortly after I signed, BMG bought them. They owned some amazing catalog stuff, and BMG bought them, and that was just an absolute nightmare, that transition. Everybody that believed in what I was doing got fired, and in the acquisition.
Which happens, it seems to happen to everybody in their career at one point or another. And I will say this. So like for me, I can point towards how either me or my co-writer got our songs cut.
Right.
Keep in mind, none of it would have been possible if I wasn't being paid by Sony every day to write.
Right.
So
Well, you had
I had a great publisher.
You had a great publisher. Kelly was awesome.
Kelly King was a bulldog. She was out there when she had a song she believed in. She was beating the street with it. And Kelly did get us cuts. I'm trying to remember. She put us in a position. She got us in the door to pitch American Ride.
Yep.
And she was pitching that song nonstop. She was pitching all the songs that got cut. It just so happened that I wrote with Jimmy Wayne, and that's how that song got cut. And the Keith Urban happened through Emily West, who, I was writing with Dave and producing.
She was actively hustling this.
She was actively hustling. Kelly King is a baller. We did an episode with her. She's fantastic. I was lucky to have her.
I feel like Nashville is also a different beast than some of these other places. Nashville's very interesting to me. I think it's probably changed a little bit, but you and I know when we were back in New York, you would have direct interaction with the A&R. I never went through a publisher for anything. I I would always get meetings and go in and meet these A&R, and some of the meetings were brutal. They were very New York City, but you'd have, you'd send songs directly to these A&R people.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't really happen here. It's like there's a chain of command here. The writers go to the publishers, who then go to the producers or the artists.
Well, no. I mean,
until
I've always been in. I haven't been down there doing that thing, slinging songs.
Right.
But I did find that once I had success, I could just send it right to the artist. Right. So it was like you send a song to Keith Urban, or you send it.
Right.
If you have a point of contact, you would go right through it. I was always convinced that the whole Music Row thing was kind of like meant to keep people occupied, where the real business happened in other modes. It was like people were getting, if you had the right relationship, you could get a song to a person,
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't know how. That's the beauty of it. I still don't know how it works, even if you've had a little bit of times that you've had success with it. I think the moral of the story is, it's like, you're going to have to work nonstop, always. You're going to feel like your publisher all the time, no matter how good your publisher is and how much they help you.
I actually love that. Like, I love the interaction with people and sending them songs. And my skin is pretty thick. And if you don't like the song, it doesn't really hurt my feelings. Not at this point.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of, writers and artists being sensitive, don't want to hear the criticism of their stuff. I don't really care. And I'll take it a step further. This is, at where I'm at now, and as long as I've been doing it, nobody's opinion matters more than mine.
Right. Yeah.
I don't mean that like their opinions don't matter. Is that it's not, because this is what we're doing is subjective.
Yeah.
So some guy who works at a record company, and I know a lot of super talented dudes.
Can't start chasing all those ghosts.
No, like, it just might not be for them.
Right.
It doesn't mean
here's another thing I tell people. I'll have a friend say, "Oh yeah, I pitched this for so and so, and they said they didn't like the snare sound of the demo, not the thing that was."
I've had that for sure.
Right.
And I had my publisher tell me that.
You know what I tell people? That's a no.
Right.
That's a I don't want to tell you no, but no. I'm not going to pitch this song to my artist. That's just like another way of saying no. So many things are just like, and I used to do this thing like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And I'd give somebody a song, and then they start talking about the snare sound, or they start talking about the guitar sound, or whatever, and I learned to be like, "Hey, what do you think of this song for Tim McGraw?" I don't care what you think about the snare sound. Right. What do you think about it for Tim McGraw? Because that's all I care about. It's like, I can't spend my day worrying about what every publisher wants in a snare drum.
No.
This is the dumbest conversation I've ever had. It's like, they're going to change the snare sound when Tim McGraw cuts it. It's going to be a completely different drummer. Right. So let's stop talking about the snare sound in my demo, right? It's like, it's a demo. And let's just realize what this is. I quickly realized that they were just saying no. And so I needed to accept no and just ask the right question.
Or they're disclaimers, in some weird way that they're just like, maybe they think the song is great, and now all the pressure is transferred onto them to try to find a home for it, and depending on how secure they are with themselves, they might start picking it apart just in case that they can't get it to work.
I don't believe that.
I've seen it with my eyes, man.
Maybe. But like, I don't feel that on that vibe from that story. I've had the situation where like I had just written something with an artist who had just won a Grammy, right? I had a bunch of hit songs. My co-writer that wrote with us had some hit songs. We all had publishing deals, all noted people. And then we're trying to get this. We had written this song that we thought was a great song. Like all three of us were really excited about it. And then I remember he was at Black River, the artist, right? Black River Publishing. And I can remember us trying to convince his publisher to demo the song. And here we have three noted creators that were saying this is one of the best songs they had written all year, right? Mm-hmm. And we were trying to convince a 20-year-old publishing like song plugger that we can go in and spend the $238 that would have been his portion of the song to demo it. Mm-hmm. And we're like begging this 20-year-old. It's like that whole system for me, I had a tough time with it.
I haven't really functioned in that system too much to have.
I just couldn't deal with it. You know, that's part of the frustration of that's what you got to navigate every day to be successful in a town like Nashville. And I don't know what it's like in New York and in LA currently for their publishing and creation and getting things heard deal. But that's the stuff that I just couldn't bear. It was all the people in between me and the real decision maker.
Yeah. And honestly, if I found a publisher I thought was like, would just go to war for me, I would absolutely sign another publishing deal with somebody. I just haven't found it yet, you know?
Yeah.
So, and you know, my background is such that I will probably go for a publishing deal at some point, but I really just go for the money because again, my experience, and I would love to be proved wrong, but my experience has been that they just don't really, I didn't have the experience you had with somebody like Kelly, you know, the stuff just wasn't really all that pitched all that much, you know? So, and again, I was living in Nashville. I also had the living in Nashville signed to LA, and the Nashville office was actually really cool here. But especially at the time, it was just, I don't want to say I was ahead of the curve.
You were,
but I was, and it was a little wild for the time, and it made their jobs hard here in Nashville.
Right.
Sure.
I remember hearing Getting On Up on the radio. If you haven't heard that song, what year was that? 2009?
10. Yeah, 2009, 2010. It was I wrote that within the first 2 weeks of living in Nashville with Laura Bell and Jeff Cohen.
I remember hearing that on the radio, and imagine 2009 radio, which was still very much George Strait.
Right.
And, you know, he was still having number ones back then, and it was very country. And then this thing came on the radio. I can remember hearing it and just like driving and staring at the radio. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was extraordinary.
For better or worse, by the way.
But it was extraordinary. And that was like, you were ahead of your time. It was like a very different thing than what was going on in Nashville. And that's another problem. Funny. People don't want to be different. They want to be like, oh, how do I get the round ball through the round hole if you're a publisher? It's like, oh, here comes Mike Shimshack. He's a parallelogram. I'm trying to put
Believe me, I felt like it too. Like I knew that, and it wasn't even that I was trying to be different. I was just making what I knew how to do. You know, I was using loops, and which is everybody puts up a loop now to write because that's what we were doing back in New York City. That's the only way I knew how to. And not the only way I knew how to song, but that was what I was doing at the time in New York. I just moved here and I just started doing it. I had no idea that was not being done here. No idea, you know. And so, you know, I was, it's that classic case. I wish I knew then what I know now, you know, but when I was younger,
different. Like, what's the difference?
I think that I think I could have adapted what I was doing more to fit the genre. I have more knowledge now of how it works. I didn't know. I was just winging it. You know, and I had this incredible amount of pressure put on me when I moved to town. There was like, this doesn't happen now because there's so many people coming to Nashville from all over. But at the time, this was 2009 when I moved to Nashville. There wasn't this huge influx of people, you know, it was just starting, I think. And I can remember, you know, there's a great story that my next door neighbor in Brooklyn was a guy named Steve McEwen, who was a big songwriter. And Steve had a bunch of success in Nashville with Carrie Underwood. And
did you do Jesus Take the Wheel? Was he on that?
No, he was on he's
on a big one in that era for her.
He was. I can't recall what, but I had done a lot of his Keith Urban demos in New York. Of course, I'm totally blanking on the one he had a number one song with this thing we had done that was literally almost verbatim. The record's almost verbatim from what we did in the studio. That was Steve's. I was really just kind of executing his ideas in my little basement in Brooklyn. But he said, hey, when you go to Nashville, you know, like, you got to meet this guy named Daryl Franklin. And Daryl was, you know, a really big deal. He was aligned with Dan Huff, who most people know is, you know, arguably the biggest producer in Nashville. He's like, go meet Daryl. I'll set up a meeting for you. So I met Daryl, and Daryl was awesome. And they had a little publishing company, a joint venture at the time called Crosstown. And I think it was maybe a Danish company, and they were the Nashville office of it. It was, I can't remember where they were based, but I remember I played this stuff for Daryl, and he just like sat there with like his head in his hands like this, like, what? It was all mixed by Chris Lord-Alge. I mean, it was like ripping off the speakers, man. You know, it was the Jimmy Robbins stuff, and it was the Tina stuff. It was all the stuff I'd done for Motown. And he just sat there like, what am I listening to? It sounded like nothing else in the town at the time. Again, I didn't even know that. I had no idea. I just knew it sounded cool. And I was psyched about it. You know, it was the best shit I had ever made. That's for sure. So anyways, he said, listen, here's my advice to you. Whatever you do, don't change a thing. Don't adapt to Nashville. And he went so far as to give me a CD of 20 songs that were like Busby songs, all these songs that were pop demos and that were eventually recorded in Nashville, you know, in a more country style. But the demos were these incredible pop songs, you know, and, you know, programmed drums, the whole nine. And he was on the forefront of that. Daryl was very much on the forefront of that. And I spent the next 5 years totally like disregarding his advice and trying to make my stuff sound like, make it sound like more like Nashville. Oh, and so fun. About 5 years later, I came back around. I was like, I can't do it. He was right. You know, I was just like, I can do what they're doing. It's gonna be great, you know? But I remember also getting to town and meeting people and going, hey man, you know, I heard you're the guy who produced all of Cara DiAguardi's hits. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I had lunch with Cara DiAguardi. That's about the extent of my, you know, we talked about, she had a publishing company, we talked about possibly signing there at the time. But the legend kind of grew because I was the new guy in town, you know, and I was doing something that was pop, you know, and I had all those cuts and everybody. So, and then the president of Universal Records in town here, Luke Lewis was his name, who had signed Shania Twain, had dubbed me his new Mutt Lange. And it's funny, but it's like good. No, not good. It was not. That is moniker, not. That is not. That is not what you want to be dubbed. And I gotta be honest with you, man. I crumbled under that pressure of knowing that's what he's telling people because I wasn't ready for that. Like, I feel, you know, here I am 10 years later. I feel way more confident in what I do. But at the time, man, like I've always struggled. Like I'm like every good artist, man. It's a, you know, this terrible mix of like ridiculous confidence and insecurity, crippling insecurity, you know? So yeah, when I heard that, I was just like, oh, that's not good, man. I'm not gonna be able to live up to that. And I knew it. I wasn't ready for it. My stuff didn't sound like that anyways. I mean, what's a God, you know? So anyways, yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. You want to hear a good Mutt Lange story?
Yeah.
This is a great story. So, one of the bands you mentioned earlier is Sons of Sylvia. And it's a record I'm kind of strangely proud of because they were three brothers. They were the Clark brothers, and they were virtuoso musicians, incredible musicians. Their father, I believe he was a Pentecostal tent revival minister, and had this huge family of 11 kids. These guys were playing their instruments. They would travel around in a bus doing tent revival stuff. these guys were so good at their instruments. They've been playing their instruments since they were like 2 years old. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I can remember years later, we put the Sons of Sylvia record came out. It did okay. It didn't succeed like we wanted to. They were on Interscope, and it just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just didn't click. But the singer Ashley Clark got somehow aligned with Mutt Lange, and Mutt wanted to make his own male version of Shania. He wanted to kind of invest heavily in one guy and build this thing. So anyways, Ashley and Mutt called me from the Bahamas and said, hey, there's this song called Do What You Do that you had done as a demo for the Sons of Sylvia that never won the record. Can you send us the Pro Tools session? I was like shitting my pants, right? Like, it's like Mutt Lange, you know? So I'm like,
did you tell Mutt to get on the phone and say, hey, Luke said that I'm your replacement here in Nashville?
No, I did not. Absolutely did not.
It's curtains for you, man.
All right. I did not do that. But anyways, long story short, I send the session over and I don't hear again from either one of them, you know, for a while. And then all of a sudden, Ashley has this EP that comes out, and he was signed to IRS. Remember IRS Records? Yeah, they had a division here in Nashville, IRS Nashville, for, I don't think it's around. It didn't last long, I don't think. But anyways, it was coming out on IRS Nashville. So I get this record that Mutt produced with this song, Do What You Do. And we had written, keep in mind, I wrote almost 30 days straight with the Sons of Sylvia guys. Every day at my house, I'd get this, open up the door, and there would be the brothers standing at my door, and we'd go upstairs. This was 30 days. I was exhausted. I don't remember much. And my kids were real young at the time. Like, so I was kind of pulling double duty. I was fried. I didn't remember much of this 30 days. Anyways, so fast forward, I get that song I sent to Mutt. I hear it on my speakers. And I'm like, holy shit, this sounds unbelievable. I was like, I got a Mutt Lange cut. What? My world has come full circle, because I loved Mutt Lange when I was growing up. Anyways, I throw like an impromptu listening party at my buddy's house, right? I bring over like snacks. I got drinks. I got everything, right? This is at Godin's place, right? Our buddy Godin. It's just like, I was like, dude, come gather around. Like, here, man, here's some, you want some pretzels? What do you want, man? You know, I had drinks. I literally walked in with like several 2 liters. Like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to blow everybody's mind. We play it. Everyone's like, holy shit, that sounds unbelievable. So anyways, about a couple days later, I look at the credits on the record and it says written by Ashley Clark and Mike Busby. Right? I was like, so I call up his record label. I was like, hey guys, listen, man, it should say Mike Shimshack, not Mike Busby, like, because we wrote it together, and during this time period we did like 30 songs or whatever, and the label's like, okay, yeah, well, we'll check into that for you. I never hear back from the label, right? I called the label again. I was just, yeah, I'm just checking in, no big deal. I'm super psyched to have the cut, it's just a,
get that name right.
Yeah, but it'd be cool if you guys got it, I'm just checking to make sure you guys got it straight, And all of a sudden they said, we're going to have Ashley call you. And Ashley calls me, bro, I had a listening party for a song. It turns out I did not write. I just didn't remember. I was so fried at the time, man. I thought it was part of, I remember the song, and I had the Pro Tools session, and the song sounds like something I would have written, and yeah, it turns out Ashley was like, no, man, I wrote that with Mike Busby. I'm about to send you the acoustic demo with him singing it. It turns out it was the song they liked. The A&R guy liked, sent it to me to see if I could kind of make the production feel more like what we were doing on the record. And so I couldn't even believe it, dude. Like, I still to this day don't remember. My memory sucks anyways, but yeah, that was really embarrassing. I had all my buddies over. I brought snacks, bro.
I'm trying to I'm trying to think if I've got anything that competes with that. I don't think I do.
No, that was one of the worst. I mean, it's hilarious now. It was so embarrassing.
It shows how arbitrary success is. You know, it really does show how arbitrary. It's like you've got 30 days of writing with them. You've got 30 years of writing songs. And it's like any one of those songs. You know, there's songs that you write that go out and they have success. And you're just like, that shouldn't even have success. It was only successful because dude had a pipeline right into this movie. Or
that's it.
You know, I wrote with the lead singer of this famous band. You know, it was like only because that was how it was. And you have all these songs. It's like any one of them could be a hit. And then it's like, one that you didn't write is a hit.
Yeah, 100%.
But it was like your body totally accepted it as though you had written it.
Oh, it's all funny to me now. You know, it's like whatever, all these years later.
So what did you do? Did you ever go back and tell the guys from the listening party? Oh, yeah, by the way. I did. Yeah, of course. Mocked me ruthlessly, as they should. Good times.
Yeah.
Well, I just think I thought it would be great to find out more about Mike Shimshack, which we all have today. I've never heard that story.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was like a really cool lens into like, not necessarily the career that gets promoted in the music business, right? You become a songwriter, or you become an artist, or you become a musician. But there's this like version where it's like, oh, the smart money is on having your fingers in a bunch of things, being good enough to create in a bunch of ways where you own a little bit of the master, you own a little bit of the copyright, where you own a little bit of all this stuff. And then at the end of the day, you develop something, it becomes something. And, you know, there's a whole other sort of diversified investment of the music business that I have and you have, and Jeff Copeland. And
yeah, you know, we've seen Nashville become more like New York and LA, where the producers control everything. They're either writing everything, you know, like, take Jimmy Robbins as a great example. Jimmy's become a great producer, you know, and he's producing these records that it used to be frowned upon, I think, in Nashville to be the producer. And
it was like slimy or dirty.
Yeah, not anymore, because the money dried up. So everybody started shifting. But now I feel like it's very hard to get songs on records. You got to have, it's either an undeniable smash hit or you're not getting on that record. Because somebody in that producer's camp, every producer now has his own publishing company. They're pulling songs from their catalog. You know, that's just what it is. It's like, I don't even know.
You got to find a way to make songs work. You just have to like create opportunity for them or wedge them into opportunity. You can't just let them float out there.
Yeah. To me, it's just like the whole system feels so flawed that you write this song, you send it to your publisher. You hope that your publisher then sends it to an A&R, who then you hope likes it enough to send it to the artist. There's so many barriers along the way. Listen, if you have great people working for you, you know, great publishers, it's a whole different. I just have never had that, you know, where I've just like felt like a real priority to somebody. So I was just like, all right, I'm just gonna have to do it myself. It's literally completely out of necessity.
Yeah,
for me. You know?
There was that old story where Christopher, who was landed a helicopter in the back of Johnny Cash's house. Who was it? He was just honored he was honored one year at the Hall of Fame. Chris Christopherson.
Oh yeah.
Landed a helicopter, rented like a Huey helicopter. He had flown helicopters in the war, I guess. And landed one in Johnny Cash's backyard and handed him a CD. You know,
that's amazing.
Like I had a friend named Tim Gaetano, and one of the guys that used to be in a band, his name was Butter. They used to be in like a duo. I can't remember the name. And for, you know, three of them. I think Heidi Newfield was in that band. What was that band called? Remember she had like a trio?
I do.
The guy was real big at the time. He's since become a muscle dude. And then it was Butter and her.
I do.
But they were really popular for a minute. But Butter, before he was in that band, followed Faith Hill into a Whole Foods and gave her, like, waited in the bushes outside, jumped out and gave her Tim Gaetano's song that she cut. You know, it takes some extraordinary, like, you've got to say this song, you have to cut the song, believe in it for you. You have to have that level of commitment from somebody, because just shooting it around and hoping it makes it onto the CD that goes out to the artist's house once a week that they see as from the label. Yeah. And they're like, I don't really want to listen to this CD, right? This thing you've been dying to get on through 5 different layers.
Right.
They're like, I want to cut my songs and the songs I've been writing with my friends. That's what the songwriter and the artist is saying. And, so it's like, you've got to have somebody that goes up to Keith Urban or Tim McGraw or Blake Shelton and says, you got to cut this song. It's, I believe this song. You got to have somebody that does that. And if it's not you, you got to find somebody that does that.
Yeah, you do. And, honestly, that hasn't really happened to me much. So I'll just continue to I'm hoping someday it does. I would love nothing more to find a publisher that just thinks what I'm doing is the cat's meow and just wants to go nuts. I just haven't experienced it. So, I got bills to pay. I got shit to do. Gotta get to work. Gotta get to work.
I think it's an interesting lens to watch a career of a guy like you. It's like, oh, okay, that's another. You think like, oh, how can I be in the music business? There's a couple ways. It's like your music business is very different than somebody else's, like Jimmy Robbins, who's just like cranking out songs that are getting cut, right?
You know what? If I had Jimmy's skill set and I was really great at writing songs that were, I think I like getting into the weeds a little more with the personal stuff with people, that they write some stuff that probably lyrically doesn't apply to other people. Like it's not as general, I guess. Jimmy's brilliant at making it very broad that appeals to a bunch of people. I tend to, again, that's the artist development is I like to get in with people and go, all right, what are we saying? I want someone to go to talk about like the lean cuisine that they're eating. And that's like, like detail stuff. I like that. I like that stuff. It's not in every song, but it's like, Elevato is a great example. Like Brad does most of those lyrics. And while they are broadly appealing to people, there's some nuance in there that's very much his story, very much this band. And that's kind of what I love about Brad's lyrics is it's ultra personal, which may make it trickier for other people to cut, but I still prefer it,
Well, I think those things are what makes songs great. Like whenever that Craig Wiseman song with the yoo-hoo rolling around the floorboard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only part of that song that I'll ever remember. I mean, it's a giant, massive hit, but it's like, I would cut it just because of that, Right.
But, you look at like Live Like You Were Dying that he also wrote. It's like, that's the broadest thing in the world, man. Everybody can relate to that idea that you should live while you're alive kind of thing. It's like, I still to this day, I absolutely love that song. That song hit me. And those guys are brilliant at that. I don't know that that's ever been my strong suit. I wish it was.
Well, your story is the one that you get.
Yeah.
Embrace it.
And
if it's not working for you, if you're not the guy that can go in and have 20 number ones and just write 3 times a day and leave the room, let someone else do the demos. Okay. Stop crying about it. Do the life you've got, and you've done that and been able to.
Well, I also think that one of the things that I'm fortunate is that I wouldn't change my life for anybody's. I love the path I've chosen. It's really difficult. I've had the shit kicked out of me a bunch of times with projects. I've lost a ton of money, but I wouldn't change a thing. I just like it. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm doing exactly what I want to do with my life. And,
that's a cool place to be.
Yeah. I wish I had the 10 number ones. I wish I had your 3 number ones. I don't, but it's still like, I wouldn't change what I'm doing for anything,
Well, we don't get to hear much from Mike Shimshack on the podcast. People complain about it.
Like the Ed McMahon.
I saw a comment yesterday where they said, I wish Mike would shut up and let Elliot Shiner talk. And I'm like, they mean Joe.
Right. It's amazing.
Which, by the way, I don't think I talked over Elliot, but, you can't make everybody happy. You just got to, hey, folks, what we're doing here is a conversation. This is not like, it's not an NPR interview. We're having conversations here, and it's gonna be back and forth. So
especially
we love that you love it. We get the overwhelming response has been really good in the comments.
This has been a blast. I've actually really enjoyed this.
It's been great to hear the docile tones of Mike Shimshack's vocals.
Well, as I've said to you before, the thing I hate more than anything on any pot, and I hate this when I watch YouTube videos or podcast, I hate people talking over each other. I hate it when I'm in the room with somebody. It's one of my pet peeves in life. So like, I just try to pick and choose my spots. You're brilliant at keeping it moving, and like, I'll just chime in once in a while. But if you and I were trying to
they're gems
equal
every
fit,
time.
if we had equal talking time, there'd be no time left for the guest, and we'd be talking over each other, especially through Zoom. Zoom's very awkward, right? It's like sometimes there's latency. It's like, oh God, that's my pet peeve. I can't even fathom that idea. So,
well, we've been lucky. It's been really great. We've been going on a run here with, we got, I think Bill Schnee will be the interview. It's not released yet, but it'll be the interview released prior to this. We just had this run where we've gotten in with some guys that me and Mike have just been honored to be able to talk with and listen to. And this has been a long journey here. We're coming up on 120 episodes of just getting to hang out with our friends and with people we admire. And I thought it was about time that you got to know Mike Shimshack a little better.
Well, thanks, Joe.
And why we love him. Everybody loves Mike Shimshack. There's not a single hater in the room. I don't know how you do that.
I don't know if that's true or not, but
I can't find one.
I very much enjoy doing this podcast with you. And this is, I may not say a ton when we're doing it, but I do. I really do. And you know what? It's changed my approach too, which is really interesting. I've learned stuff from this podcast that I now apply into my own production work. And that's been really cool.
Absolutely.
And I say this to everybody. I was like, when I talk to my friends, I was like, we had so-and-so on the podcast today and he was talking about this, perfect example. Andy Van Dett talked about that loudnesspenalty.com.
Yeah.
I literally just used it the other day. I'll use it for every single mix I'm uploading.
I get a ton of emails about loudnesspenalty.com. And someone hit me up and said, there's actually a plugin. Who was it? It was, I think, Sean McDonald from Pittsburgh, who we've had on the program. Yep. He said there's a plugin version that will go up on in your Pro Tools. Yeah. You could do it in real time in Pro Tools.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's just been really, and the philosophies, we focus a lot on philosophy as much as we do on gear. And the philosophy at this point, like we all in our plugins, we all have enough compressors to sink a ship, good compressors. The stock compressors will do the job if you know what you're doing. All of them. You don't need all this crazy shit. And that's kind of one of the things like I love with these guys is they kind of don't even sure they care about gear, but it's more about like, these old, like I love these old school guys too. I learned so much from these guys about moving the mic, Yeah. And I love that idea with Phil Brown where I've always put the mic straight on the speaker. He's like, no, that's how you blow up the capsule. Turn it a little to the side, and you won't blow up the capsule. I was like, whoa, like just some great ideas. I've learned as much as anybody from this podcast.
I thought it was interesting. You said you were like, oh, we didn't really go into a lot of detail with Bill Schnee about like gear. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But then I said, yeah, you're right. And then you said, then Mike replied, I bet he's the kind of guy that it doesn't even matter. It's just like whatever it needs, he does. Right. But it's like, it's more about the whole approach with that guy making great music. And it's like, well, how do you set your vocal compressor? And it's like, well, give me a vocal and I'll tell you because it's going to be different every time.
Different for everything. Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to be a long release.
I remember being so annoyed with that answer years ago too, with these engineers. Like,
and you were like, yeah, just give me the vocal.
Just tell me the settings, man. And it really is different for everybody.
It's the desperation of every young engineer. Right. It's like, I need that. If I just put it on my vocal out, and it's like, it's not that way. These guys have silently been telling us through this whole 120 episodes. They've been silently telling us that. And it's like, we don't want to hear it sometimes, but the reality is it's like you got to carefully listen.
Very much.
You don't need more gear you don't need the next plugin. You can deal with all the plugins that have been created up to this point and make a great record. Your problem is not that you don't have the plugin. The problem is that you're not paying attention to what you need to be paying attention to in the mix.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And that's nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Because that means I got to pick up a shovel and start working.
Well, you remember, we may have talked about this before we go here. Did you ever go on Gear Sluts? The web, you were on Gear Sluts.
I think they changed the name of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think the name got canceled.
Oh,
it's called Gear something, not Sluts.
But most of the people listening to this probably know what Gear Sluts is.
Oh,
It's a big forum, for audio engineering, if you don't know. But anyways, I remember there was a guy, like there was a thread on there about Andy Wallace and Andy Wallace using the SSL 9000. And, you'd get some people saying, well, listen, you put me behind an SSL 9000, I'll make it sound incredible too. Right. And then one of his assistants chimed in, his old assistant, by the way, and just said, hey, I'm one of Andy's old assistants. And I just want you to know that Andy can make a better record than you with a Mackie,
8 bus.
not even like an 8-channel mixer through a blackface ADAT. It's going to sound better in yours because it's how he hears things.
Yeah.
You know, that's just, I remember that stuck with me so much. It's like, and that's what it is for these guys. Is like, I'm sure they all want the Neumann microphones, and I'm sure they appreciate all the Neves and all that stuff. But it's just how they hear things. Like Bill Schnee can take anything that's decently recorded and probably figure out how to mix it and make it sound absolutely beautiful. It's how he hears things.
You know what I loved about one of the things he said? I just was listening to Pandora on the porch the other night after that interview, and on came something off of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can't remember what it was. Maybe
Peg
it was
or Josie or one of those things.
Josie, I think. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because I wanted to ask him, I'm like, oh, did you try to get that clean Steely Dan sound? And I really liked his answer, which was like, I don't know. He was just like, right. I was just engineering. And because I thought it's interesting because Steely Dan is not a band. They have a different drummer, a different bass player, a different guitar player every time, you know, and it's like, but all their records have that Steely Dan sound, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just was like, when he was like, yeah, I don't really know. It just was like where it was headed. I followed where it was headed.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, so like the way the drums sound on every Steely Dan record, in the overall clarity of those records, is it Donald Fagen? Is it Walter Becker? Right? Who is it? Just the energy?
That's probably the combination of two of them. Yeah,
it's just crazy because those guys don't even. But I just love the way he was like, yeah, I didn't intend for it to sound that way. I just followed the sound that was happening, and that's where I ended up.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks.
Well, thanks
for being you, Mike.
Oh, likewise. Thanks,
You're
Joe.
good dude. And of course, Mike's socials are limited to the same one tiny social that he has down in the links at Mike at Shaq Jones.
JONZ. It's just my Instagram. It's really the only thing I have.
He's trying to blow up that Instagram. He's focusing on laser focus on one thing in social media.
That's right.
He's not going to diversify himself. And waste all that energy.
Shimshack.com, and now Shimshack.com is like they make like metal fasteners or something. I don't know what is.
Well, that's it. All you wanted to know about Mike Shimshack and more. And, you know, it goes to show you can have a career in this music business that doesn't look like maybe the one you thought. Mike didn't think his career was going to include producing and mixing and having, you know, the daily schedule he has. It's just like, you know, it's cool to know that there's multiple ways to make it in the music business.
Definitely.
So thank you, Mikey.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thanks,
this
Joe.
week. Signing off from the West Barn. It's Joe West and
Mike Shimshack.
Peace out.
Peace.